Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Women in Medicine Student Leadership Panel. We're so happy to have you here today and joining us for this incredibly powerful and impactful panel of women. My name is Dr. Rachel Villanueva. I'm actually the 122nd president of the National Medical Association, representing Black physicians and patients across the country. This panel is particularly special to me because I was also Student National Medical Association national president when I was in medical school many years ago, and I'm the first president of NMA who served in that capacity. So this leadership panel is very special to me. So without further ado, let's bring on this amazing panel that we have of female student leaders. First, I'll bring on Karina Diaz.
Hello, everyone. Super nice to be here.
Great. Hannah Hendricks.
Hi, great to be here.
Chantal Thompson. You're on mute.
Hello and good evening, everyone.
The ills of webinars. Sabrina Smith.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Donna Tran.
Good evening, everyone.
And Lauren Wooten.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Okay, awesome. So I think we are first so excited to have everyone here today. I think I just want to talk a little bit about how women are changing the culture and the face of medicine. You know, AAMC in the most recent medical school class, over 50% were women of matriculants and enrollees. And that's been the case for the last 3 years. So we know that medicine is changing and women are leading the way. So this panel is so exciting tonight. I want each of the ladies to give you a little bit of information about themselves and their organization, and then we'll get right into some questions. Let's start with Karina.
Hello. So my name is Karina Diaz. I am currently an 8th year MD PhD student at the University of Washington, which also means I am in my 4th year of medical school and graduating this year. I am originally from California and grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area before I went to Davis. And now I am the president for LMSA, or the Latino Medical Student Association. And to tell you a little bit more about LMSA, it's an organization that started 50 years ago, actually. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. And it was created to unite and empower current and future physicians through service, mentorship, and education, and especially to advocate for the improved health of the Hispanic and Latino community in the United States. And so that's all of our Hispanic and Latino community in medical school, pre-meds, to all of our patients. And in addition to that, I wanted to say that as we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, we're super excited to have one of our original founders join us at our conference coming up in a week, starting March 3rd. So hopefully you can join us there too.
Thanks so much, Karina. I mean, God, Karina, you've been in medical school forever. Are you so excited to graduate?
100%.
Yes, I would be too. Let's have Hannah kick it off next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I am the national president of the American Medical Student Association, and I am between my 3rd and 4th years at Ohio State University College of Medicine. Just really quickly, if you're not familiar with AMSA, for the last 72 years, we've used education and advocacy to inspire medical students and to create a better world by making small changes in healthcare to improve health equity and justice. And that's really what we're all about. Yeah, so great to be here this evening.
It's so great to have you. And what a long history your organization's had. Hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that. Chantal Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure to serve as the National President of the Student National Medical Association. The Student National Medical Association is dedicated to supporting current and future underrepresented minority students, addressing the needs of underserved communities, and encouraging clinically excellent, culturally competent, and socially conscious physicians. We do that in many different ways, but mostly the highest way that we do that is by supporting all of our students throughout their education. Personally, myself, I am a fifth-year DO MPH student at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. In that sense, I will be graduating this year as well, and am looking forward to stepping into the next leg of my own professional and medical career. We are just like LMSA. We are having our getting prepared for our first conference back since 2019, which was the last time that we had an in-person conference, and that will be happening in April. So highly encourage you that if you are interested in anything that any of us have to say, that you definitely register for all of our conferences. If you can afford it, that's what I would do, is register for everyone's conferences, because they're all going to be amazing, and will give you the opportunity to not only see what our organizations do in action, but also will expose you to a very great amount of professional development and a clinical development. So yes, happy to be here with everyone.
Excellent. I see all of y'all like to stay in medical school for a very long time. Everyone's doing all these extra degrees. I got in and out because I had to, but I'm really impressed by all of you. Sabrina, why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sabrina, I use she, her pronouns. I am the second executive director of Medical Student Pride Alliance. I took a few gap years in between med school, and I went to grad school for a few years. So I also have a master's of science in bio and a master's of public health. And now I'm a third year, almost fourth year med student, planning to apply into OB-GYN. I go to University of Pittsburgh, and Medical Student Pride Alliance is the newest org of all the ones on the panel, I believe. We were founded in 2018 by a group of queer medical students, and we're currently run exclusively by a group of queer medical students. So run by and for LGBTQ med students. It is an organization that I'm really proud to be a part of and to lead. We do a lot of work to support, uplift, and promote LGBTQ medical students' careers, as well as pre-med students who are seeking careers as physicians. We provide resources, both in terms of finances, networking, and career development opportunities for such students. We recently just surpassed 100 chapters, which is like a really big deal because we're so new. So that was a really exciting growth moment for the organization of only being like 3.5 years old. We do have our first upcoming conference that we're hosting April 9th and 10th. It'll be a research and a leadership development conference, and we're super stoked to have arrived at this point where we can offer our inaugural conference to people virtually. So you can head to our website and register and learn more about that. It's free for our members.
Excellent. I'm really shocked that you're only 3.5 years old and have 100 chapters. That's amazing. Not only that, but how is it took this long for your organization to come into existence? I would have thought that would have been a long time ago. So definitely needed. We're so happy about that. I'm also happy that you're going to be an OBGYN, because that's what I am. So if anyone's interested, I'll drop my info in the chat so that you can contact me. I can tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. Next, Donna Tran, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Tran, and currently I'm a MD, MPH student at Michigan State University, College of Human Medicine, and Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, respectively. Currently, I'm in my gap year, obtaining my MPH and interning for the U.S. Senate Health Committee HELP and the Student and Young Representative Board of Directors for the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus for Public Health. Some of my hobbies include rock climbing, playing with my French bulldog, Boba Princess, and being a total foodie. My path to APAMSA started like serendipitously, I swear. My first year, I got elected into Regional 5 Director, then Community Outreach Director, then External Affairs VP, CFO, and now finally President. A little bit about APAMSA though. So APAMSA started in 1994. There was a need to have an Asian American medical student listserv, and Dr. B. Lee and Dr. Jimon Lee and some of the co-founders started that listserv, and the rest is history. Currently, we have about 10,000 members across over 150 chapters in 9 regions. Our mission is to serve as a forum for student leaders to engage these health issues and develop initiatives and projects addressing those needs in our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. Some of our national initiatives currently right now is, being in diversity and helping minority groups, advocacy and health policy, and engaging with peer organizations, health affair projects such as bone marrow, hepatitis, mental health, involving our pre-med and alumni, and then also, doing communications and marketing and engaging with our members, serving the community. These past 2 years have been particularly difficult because of COVID and the rise of anti-Asian racism. We try to support our members through healing circles and teaching advocacy on all levels. I'm really grateful for this platform to empower women. It's hard for me to watch the news because I see headline after headline, especially about young Asian women and that look just like me. And so we're really grateful for this platform and this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me and APAMSA. Thank you.
Excellent. I mean, you guys have more degrees on this panel than it's so incredibly impressive. You're doing the student leadership plus internship plus getting 10,000 other degrees. I mean, so impressive. I'm sure people will want to know how you manage that and how you manage your time. So we'll definitely have to get to that in a little bit. And last but not least, Lauren, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Wooten, pronoun she, her, and I'm a 4th-year med student at Georgetown going into pediatrics. I grew up in the DC area, did my undergrad at Cornell, and got a master's from GW. And I am the student division president of the American Medical Women's Association, aka AMWA, ending my term next month. A little bit about AMWA is that we were founded in 1915, and our mission is to advance women in medicine and to serve as a voice. We have individual divisions for practicing physicians, resident divisions, students, which includes med students and graduate level interprofessional students, as well as a pre-medical division. In terms of the student division, we serve over 4,500 students all over the world, and we strive to support medical students and graduate level interprofessional students and to help everyone navigate kind of this graduate level school through financial support like scholarships, and then also mentorship and community. And then as student division president, I'm also a voting member of the board of directors and oversee a team of 24 student national leaders. At AMWA, we welcome all and any who may be interested in joining, regardless of gender. And we actually have our national conference, which is virtual this year, in just a month away. So you can head to our website to register.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So let's just dive right into some sort of important questions that I think our participants might have for you. And some of you may have talked about this already in your intros, but just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your path to leadership. Were you a person who always knew you wanted to be president of your organization, or did you kind of stumble into the role? What did your path to leadership look like? Who wants to kick it off? Maybe Sabrina?
Sure, yeah. So my path to becoming executive director of MSPA was, I didn't start off thinking I was going to be executive director. So like I said, the organization was founded in 2018 and officially launched in November of 2018. I got accepted to medical school between fall and spring of of 2018 to 2019. And then I reached out to them on Instagram, actually, because they were seeking leadership, like recruitment. And I said, I'm an incoming first year, but I'm not technically a med student yet. Like, can I still join the leadership of this organization? And they're like, yeah, of course, come on board. So I joined as a director of one of our teams, or an assistant director rather. And I sort of progressed from there up to executive director. So my first year, I was assistant director of our campus affiliate team, which is the team that works primarily to recruit and engage with chapters. My second year, I was the director of that team. And then our first director, executive director, ended up graduating. And so the position opened up for executive directors, and we had elections, and I ended up running and being voted in. So I was inspired by our previous leader, who fearlessly led it and is now like a wonderful internist in Miami. She's a PGY1. And I really was inspired by all the people that I work with in this organization, and the work that we do aligns very closely with my why and whole passion and mission for being in medicine. And so I was really honored to hold this role for the first year, and then to be reelected again for my second and final year as I exit med school.
Excellent. And I think that's a really important point you made, was you were like, I'm interested. Can I serve? And I think sometimes people are intimidated by just the thought of being in leadership or a national leader. And I think most organizations actually really desire to have people who are interested. And so just interest alone is a great starting point in leadership. Anybody else who wants to talk about their path?
I can. I started out actually as a pre-med, starting an AMSA pre-med chapter at my campus, but then I also joined our national leadership on one of our action committees, which we have for a lot of social justice topics. I started out on our women and LGBT action committee, doing a lot of representation and access and equity work through there. Then I joined our Wellness and Student Life Action Committee the following year. Then I was a regional director who helps with membership. And then 2020, actually, the year that SNMA and AMSA had a joint virtual conference, my good friend Isaiah Cochran, who was the AMSA president at the time, called me up out of the blue, second year med student, called me up out of the blue and was like, "You should run for president." And I was like, haha, you're funny. You're a funny man. And he was not joking. And, it took some thinking, especially because AMSA is a little different in the way that our president works, where you take a year off school. But that is, I never expected to be where I am. But I think that my work with AMSA has shown that I care about where this organization is going. And I think that is important, that your goals and goalposts can change.
Excellent. So the unsuspecting leader, someone just kind of pulled you right in, which a lot of times happens, right? They see something in you that maybe you didn't even realize, and they are like, no, this is the person that we need to lead our organization. So they saw that something special inside of you. How about Chantal? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your leadership path in SNMA?
Yeah, so my path into SNMA was very similar to many other people. It first started off with my exposure to SNMA. So I am a non-traditional student. I completed my undergrad a few years before I decided to apply to medical school, and was actually working as a research assistant at Hampton University. And during that time, I was kind of looking for a place where I could find some assistance in applying to medical school, because, you lose a lot of those opportunities, or at least I felt like I was losing a lot of those opportunities after I graduated. So the SNMA has an organization, or in a way sort of like a parent or big sister to the Minority Association for Pre-Medical Students, also known as MAPS, which is available on many college campuses. And basically I became friends with some individuals from the MAPS chapter, and they opened their arms and kind of allowed for me to become a sort of unofficial student MAPS member, exposing me to many of the opportunities that they had there for pre-med students. And it was because of that that I was able to get into medical school. From there, because of the fact that I was introduced to SNMA through that, I immediately went looking for an SNMA chapter at my medical school and was happy to find one, which had a lot of opportunities for students to become involved, whether it was community service, participating in the Black History Month event that they would have, or just any of the events that they would have throughout the year. And basically, I was sort of shoulder tapped my way through leadership from there. So it was one of the co-presidents at the time that recognized my own drive and passion for the mission of the organization and asked for if I was interested in becoming co-president. Again, similar situation for associate regional director, even though I was already looking into going into leadership for the organization, but they kind of guided me towards becoming associate regional director for my region. And again, very similar situation for presidency. I had every intention of becoming part of the national board in some way, shape, or fashion, but I don't think that it crossed my mind that I would have the talent or ability to lead the organization on a national, as national president. But sometimes it is others who see the skill, the drive, and the work that you are doing, and are able to inspire you to do the things that you never thought that you would be able to do yourself. And I feel that was the case with me, as it was for pretty much, I think, for many of us on this call. So, I feel like I'm at home. One of the reasons why I came into medicine in the first place was to become a physician and become someone who can help the community, which I was raised in. I was low income. No one in my family was a doctor. I was first in my family to have graduated from college. So I wanted to kind of be that person in my community that I felt like I was missing when I was growing up. And it was amazing to be a part of an organization where every member of the organization has that same passion and those same goals. And so I really am humbled to be in this position, but also thrilled to be, part of it. It allows for me to meet all of you who are able to do that for, your own communities. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even know that you were sort of pre SNMA leader. I mean, so impressive that was part of what helped you to go into medical school and kind of nurtured your passion for medicine and what you do now. That's really incredible. It's really incredible. I love that. Anybody else want to talk about their path to leadership?
I'd like to talk about it. It's a little bit different from what's been mentioned so far. So at the University of Washington, the LMSA chapter there is very small, which means literally all of the Latinos are usually a part of the LMSA chapter. Otherwise, we would be like non-existent. Because of that, as the MD PhD, especially during my research years, I had a lot more flexibility in my schedule. So I basically became the representative of my chapter at each of our meetings with the region and as well as at conferences. And so I think people slowly started to get to know me a lot because I was always there. And especially whenever there was anyone interested in research, I was the one MD PhD a part of the LMSA West regional board at that time. And so literally everyone would send those students to me. Anyone interested in research was just sent to me. And I think because they saw how I was always there, the leadership when I was younger, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, nominated me to take a position. I had not really thought about taking a position in higher up leadership. And that that is essentially how it happened. I'm just like always there. And people are like, oh, that means she's dedicated in whatever she's doing. And so it started off with being in charge of research and analytics, which 100% made sense for my background. And it was a brand new position. So they really wanted me to take it and expand it. But then from there, I was eventually nominated to be director-elect, which was a huge surprise to me. But I was very excited. And unfortunately, that year, one of the co-directors had to move. And so I had to step into the co-director role early, and then was revoted in the following year. So I got to be co-director of LMSA West for 2 years. Which was absolutely exciting. I was like, okay, this will just be what I do until I graduate because I've got this. And the president at the time talked to me and was like, have you thought about going to national board at all? And honestly, I had not. I was like, I'm comfortable where I am. I know I'm going into 4th year and I need to graduate. So I was like, this will be fine. I can balance this. But it turned, he basically put that little bug in my ear and was like, okay, maybe I should do this. Maybe this would be a great chance for LMSA West to be more involved with national. And it worked because I'm here now and it's been an amazing time. I think I've really enjoyed getting to work with all of the regions and really being the representative for the nation.
So I definitely hear a recurring theme where other people have tapped individuals to become leaders, right? Again, that other people are seeing this, it's not that you were just around, Karina, it's that they saw you as a mentor to other people and a leader. And that's exactly who they wanted to be the person leading their organization. I think people are intentional in who they tap. I don't think they tap people just because. So I think you should all be just so proud of yourselves. And then I don't know if the people on the panel have been able to see the chat. The chat's amazing. Everyone's shouting out everyone else. Somebody's grandmother is on. Who's Jillian Fernandez's granddaughter?
My grandma. She's watching from Malaysia, actually. So
wow.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, so amazing. So you guys in the panel, please take a quick look because everyone's shouting you out as they should. Donna, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your path to leadership?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. V. So I actually have a confession. I did not know APAMSA existed when I was a pre-med at the University of California, Davis. However, to redeem myself, I was very involved with the local Asian community and cancer screening clinic. So I really dove into that for all of my undergraduate years. I took a few years off as well as a non-traditional student. I feel like a lot of us here have as well. And went into Michigan State University. During my first year, everything was kind of a blur. Like, I actually can't believe I'm in my gap year now, but the opportunity to become a regional director came suddenly on one Saturday when they needed some representatives from the Midwest. And so me and a couple of my classmates, we ran for the regional director position and won it online. And we were planning for the regional conference. As I mentioned before, in the Midwest, it comprises of like Michigan, there's Ohio, Kentucky. And so a lot of representation for at least the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community there is, maybe not as much from California, where I'm originally from. And so it was really rewarding to be able to kind of host that regional and meet other students at other campuses and see what they're doing. Halfway through the year, I was told that like the community outreach director unfortunately had to step down and they were looking for someone to kind of help out fill in the shoes. And so I volunteered and basically helped local chapters throughout the nation being able to fund their projects to put on health affairs, screenings, educational outreach, but just really rewarding work to be able to help local chapters and members get out there and just meet with our community and really care for them. Afterwards, when COVID hit, became the external affairs and CFO and helped plan the very first virtual national conference for APAMSA. We've never had one that was fully virtual before. And so I'm sure everyone here can attest to how crazy the last 2 years was. And, I was thinking about this when everyone was talking. Like, I only know, like, being president during COVID. I don't think any of us here were president before COVID, right? That would have been like 2019 or something. So yeah, like, I have never known like anything outside of COVID. And so I'm sure everyone here has had their ups and downs, and especially with APAMSA as well. We've done a lot of things to help out our Asian American community and reinvest back into our members. So yeah, that was like the whole spiel, but it's been mind blowing that I didn't realize that until like this panel.
Sorry, I was trying to mute myself. There are sirens in the background. I live in Harlem, so so there's some kind of fire somewhere. Hopefully not in my building. But I mean, pretty impressive, Donna, for someone who didn't even know the organization existed to now be the president. That's a true leader. That is a leader. All right, we'll round it out with Lauren. I just want to say before Lauren speaks, if anyone has any particular questions for our panelists, there's such a wealth of information and knowledge in being leaders in difficult times. So if anybody has questions, please just drop them in the chat and we'll get to them in a little bit. But Lauren, tell us a little bit about your leadership path.
Sure. So like Chantal, I'm a non-traditional student, but like Donna, I wasn't connected with any national organizations until I came to medical school. I did go to an all-girls school growing up, so I think joining AMWA was kind of a natural fit for me. It's something I sought out. I'm a pretty resourceful person, I think. So in terms of leadership, though, the current president, at the time, that was 2019, I guess, reached out to me and said, like, we love the advocacy work you're doing. We love your voice and would love to have you on the team at AMWA. So you should consider running for president-elect. So I did, and the rest is history. So I was president-elect in 2020 and then did my president year last year to now.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so we have a really good sense of how everyone came into these positions. And now we have a few little questions that we'll start off with. But again, if anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll definitely get to those questions. Oh, Nicole said, so proud of you, Lauren. So did Allie. Great. Love that. I'm going to ask you, Lauren, first. What challenges have you faced in your role as president-elect and then ultimately president? And do you think any of those challenges were directly a result of you being a female student?
Sure. I would say in my role, one of the biggest challenges is probably actually identifying the needs of our student members and like taking action to support them, because we have so many, just trying to support the most people as we can. Given we are an older organization, we also as a division kind of challenge AMWA as a whole toward equity, not only for white cis women who were the original founding members of AMWA, but all women and non-binary folks as well. I think as a student, it can be hard to find your voice amongst like the decades of physicians' experience as a member, particularly for me as a member of the board. But it's also a great opportunity to like use my voice in a pretty low stakes environment. I will say sometimes it can be a challenge, just like managing medical school and national leadership. It's not too bad with AMWA. We have like monthly meetings, so it's not too bad. And then I would say like I definitely benefit as a cis woman leader at an organization that really was founded to support women. So I don't really face any misogyny necessarily, but of course, as a Black woman with like inherently intersectional identities, it can be a challenge to make my voice heard, excuse me, in a primarily white institution. But I'm definitely grateful for like the student and physician supports I've had so far, who welcomed me at the beginning and have supported me and my efforts to like expand AMWA support to a wider population.
Excellent, excellent, excellent points about intersectionality of, you know, I think everyone on this panel has multiple ways in which they're challenged as a medical student in school, aside from being just, being a leader, but being in certain positions. And Lauren, interestingly enough, you're national president of AMWA, just dropped something in the chat about how proud she is of you. I feel like so lucky I've gotten to work both with Dr. Chin and with you. And so I know that AMWA is in incredibly capable hands. I'm so impressed by both of you. So I'm gonna ask Sabrina if she wants to add anything to any other kind of comments to this question.
Yeah, I think in addition to all the things that Lauren said, another challenge that I face, particularly running such a young organization like MSPA, is just kind of setting up our organization to be sustainable, right? So we're very young. We don't ask for membership fees from any of our pre-med or medical student members, just recognizing financial barriers. And so we're completely donation dependent. And as such, one of my goals as leader this year, particularly my last year, has been to kind of establish us more financially and get us more set up to hit our 5-10-year goals. And that's been challenging from a new organization standpoint and from a new leader standpoint. Luckily, I have an amazing support from all of the national leadership team that works with me, and they've all been great. And I think similarly to that note, just in terms of recruitment too, has been rough. Like Donna was saying, we're COVID has been going on for the past 2 years. And so we started as an entirely virtual organization. We had plans to transition to doing more in-person things, like an in-person conference, for example, but then COVID hit. So now we're primarily have been only virtual outside of our chapters that are local and in person. And so when it comes to kind of, finding successors for those leaders who are graduating, we do recruitments online via social media, via our emails, et cetera. And those, while successful, some recruitment campaigns are more successful than others, but that is definitely a challenge that I think any organization faces in their beginning years, and one that we have certainly felt, but have been lucky enough to overcome at each point that we've had to face that. Additionally, since we're all about LGBTQ health and supporting queer med students, that's a field of health and medical education that's becoming more, as of recent years, popular in medical education to talk about. And so that has been something that I feel we as leaders of this organization obviously all feel and share this passion to drive that mission and kind of that mission forward. But at the same time, faculty and leaders of medical institutions that might not have learned this information in their time in medical school can provide some pushback to that. So that's something that we experience here and there, is just kind of pushing the, I don't want to say agenda, but kind of pushing the gay agenda a little bit to get the ball rolling and get medical institutions up to date and up to par with the training that students need to receive, and residency programs training, graduates with proper care and things to make sure that our patients that are part of the LGBT community are getting equitable, accessible, and non-discriminatory care. So those are all things that certainly are challenging as a leader and also as a new organization.
Yeah, definitely. I would imagine starting your organization as a virtual organization has been incredibly challenging. So the fact that you've gotten so many chapters already, so impressive. And then just touch base with me, because I do have an organization that is working in the OBGYN space in order to educate clinicians about transgender care. And so I definitely want to put you in touch with them, with your organization. So
Perfect.
What this is all about, making connections and just learning from each other. All right, next question. I'm going to ask Chantal this question. That medical school can be just such an incredibly challenging time to balance your life and work very well. Can you give our audience some tips, tips about how you did this and were able to be on the national board and then ultimately national president, and how you can, encourage other people to do the same that might be reluctant to take on such a position?
That's such a great question that needs to be answered, especially because it wasn't anything that I had any skill in doing before I took on a lot of these leadership positions. It was a very much a learning curve for me in the beginning. My first large position that I felt was large was being co-president of my chapter. And it was because we had such a large chapter that was so active, both on the local and regional level of the organization. It's very easy for you to get so overwhelmed with both of your priorities as a medical student, knowing that that was the ultimate goal and the reason why you came into medical school, and then also wanting to become a leader and feeling like you want to put your best foot forward on behalf of your members and on behalf of the mission itself. I know for myself, I had the added sort of dynamic of being a DO student, which is not traditionally known to be looked at as highly as some of my allopathic or MD counterparts, and sort of having that feeling of needing to do more, do 2 times as much to kind of prove myself. But of course, that comes to a detriment when you're putting a lot of that dedication into the work for your organization and not more so for your schooling. I think the biggest skills that I was able to learn is to always remind myself of always remind yourself of what your priorities are, that ultimately you're a student first. The adage that we use a lot at SNMA is the S in SNMA stands for student. And if you're ever not sure about what you need to be putting your dedication to, it should be your schoolwork first. Always thinking forward and really doing well with scheduling out things that need to be done, scheduling out your day. So I would start off the day answering emails and then end off the day midway. I would check more emails, but only give myself a certain amount of time so that I can make sure that I got all of my practice questions done, reviewed my lectures as I needed to, so on and so forth. Of course, in clinicals, it's the dynamics are a little different because you never know when you're getting in and getting out. And I think that one's the more challenging one. I had a lot of late nights with not a lot of sleep, unfortunately, but making sure that, again, you communicate with your counterparts, let them know, hey, I'm on a surgery rotation and this is what I want to match into. So I'm not going to be around as much as I usually am. And just in case you need anything, these are the people who you can reach out to for these particular initiatives. This is how you can contact me if there's ever really an emergency, but definitely make sure you reach out to these other individuals first, and just making sure that you have a sort of plan of action in place for everyone around you, as well as yourself, so that you can execute everything well. And I can say, I mean, it's still a process. There have been times where I may not have gotten the process I may not have gotten everything lined up the way that they should. And that's, I think, the beauty of being a leader in a student-run organization is the fact that a lot of us are in the same position and we give each other grace. We understand that for many of the leaders within our organizations, this is our first leadership experience. Even though some people, like me, I was a leader in professional realm in my career before coming into medicine. For others, that's not the case. And it does take some time to really learn those dynamics. So number one, giving yourself grace, remembering why. Two is remembering why you are here, which is to be a student. And of course, making sure that you have a plan in place, and you're letting everyone who is part of your team know about that plan and they're all on the same page. Just making sure that your communication is solid. So hopefully that gives some tips to people out there. That's something I did not get all the tips on. But I think that, I'm sure that some of the other amazing leaders on this call will have their own tips that help them to navigate. You're muted, Dr. V.
I was trying to keep the noise of Harlem out. I think one of the most important things that you said or a couple of things that you said were really key, was one is that you're a student first, And that's really the most important thing. If you don't graduate, no one's ever going to benefit from you being a clinician and all of the talents that you have to share. So important. 2 is lean on other people, right? Ask for help. It's, it's important that you are leaders, but you're not leaders alone. You have a good group of people within your organization, in your schools, and just your support networks, and lean on them when you need them. And the 3rd thing is, don't forget self-care. Remember to take care of yourselves, mental health, physical health, exercise, eat well. All those things are so important to keep yourselves healthy. It's not worth it if being a leader ends up meaning that, your schoolwork suffers or your health suffers in any way, mentally or physically. I think that is definitely something I had some of my own board members when I was in SNMA did not do. And so always really, really important to keep in mind. All right. Does anyone else want to add to that? Comments? I mean, Chantal gave us such a great answer, but does anyone else have anything else they want to add, or we can go to next? Yep. Okay. Sure.
So prefaces to everyone, I am still working on these skills right now, so I am no expert. I will put that on the table right now. But Chantal did touch upon 2 of those things that I wanted to mention. So support of a village, right? Being able to delegate is really important. People have literally told me that verbatim. You need to delegate. So I know we all feel like super women wanting to do everything, and there's all this like weird pressure and intersectionalities that was mentioned before. However, there's only 24 hours in a day, can't do everything. So definitely support of your village, and having some outlet is definitely good for your mental health as well. One thing I do want to add is that I actually learned this within the past year. I call it mental discipline. So what that means is that, like I mentioned before, you only have so many hours in a day, and you need to prioritize what needs to come first, second, and what opportunities can you seize to be able to do things efficiently in that amount of time. And anyone who's watching that knows me at all is going to laugh when I just said that, because I'm very bad at that. However, I didn't realize when I was in medical school, like my 1st and 2nd year, I was working really hard and studying every day, but it was very inefficient. And I want to thank like Michigan State, admin and faculty and all my members and my colleagues who have helped me realize that, it's okay to not suffer alone. I actually was diagnosed with ADHD, and besides being interested in psychiatry and family med, I want to destigmatize that, right? Because medical students and physician burnout and depression is very real. And so it took me becoming a leader to realize that. And I can guarantee you, everyone here has their own skeletons in the closet. No one is perfect. And everyone's human. I bet you we all have similar experiences. So that's just what I wanted to say, is that, we're all medical students and we're all human as well.
Such great points. Such great points. No one has to be perfect. We're all work in progress. Trust me, as I raise my hand way too many times for things, learning that balance, learning to ask for help. They're lifelong skills, really. And you just continue to learn. So I think it's just important for us to just remind ourselves of those things as we are leaders in organizations. I am going to switch to Hannah, and I'm going to ask you about, since your position is a little different in what you have to do, and you can kind of tell everybody what that entails to be president of AMSA. If you could tell us a little bit about that and the considerations you had to, things you had to consider when you were deciding whether or not you were going to be president.
Yeah, so my considerations were a little different, partly because one of the major benefits of being president of AMSA is that you don't actually have to balance schoolwork at the same time, because you have to take a year off of school, which is a different kind of problem. So the major consideration was, am I willing to put my education on pause and maintain, my knowledge independently during this year as president? And and before returning to finish medical school. And I'm a little atypical even for AMSA presidents. Usually they do that year off between 4th year and residency. So this is a whole new ball game, but we're really fortunate at AMSA. It allows us this like great latitude to seize opportunities and to do things that sometimes other organizations aren't able to make work because our president is a full-time employee of the organization. So I don't have to worry about getting out of clinicals to go to a meeting with the NIH or whatever. I don't have to manage that specific time commitment that can be really restrictive in medical school. And we're very fortunate to have the president and sometimes even full-time fellows who are also students who are taking a year off school to focus on things like education and advocacy. It's an amazing opportunity, but it is a big decision to take a year away, especially during medical school. And for me, when 4th year was right there on the horizon. So
right, you were almost out. You were almost there.
Gets paid. She also gets paid.
That's true.
You know what,
I am
money
a
never
full-time
hurts.
employee. I am paid and I have benefits. I have dental.
Wow. Wow. So a
No
job.
pay.
A
job.
And I can imagine, how was your institution, your medical school must have been really supportive to not enable you to do that. How was their response to you wanting to take off that year? Or what
Yeah,
was
I
their
think
response?
I kind of approached it in a way of, I kind of announced to them that like, hey, I've been elected president and that requires me to take a year off. So in that sense, I did not like, hey, is it okay if I take a year off to do this? And my plan, if I had pushback, which I didn't end up having because we had a really supportive Dean of Student Affairs who has since retired, but she was so amazing. She was very excited for me and we didn't really have to do like a back and forth. But my sort of backup argument was going to be, many of my classmates will take a research year and I'm going to take an advocacy year. That's what I'm going to do. And that was my plan. So
I love the fact that you really didn't give them an option, that you just told them that's what you were going to do. And sometimes you have to be the trailblazer at your school. I went to Yale for medical school. I had a incredibly supportive student affairs dean who I now serve on the alumni affairs committee with, and I love. And he, if there was anything for SNMA, he always gave us money. He was as committed to us being involved in leadership as we were. And that I think is also really important, is to have a really supportive school and leadership in your school. I'm gonna ask Karina, because I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about how a student organization who still has a partner organization works. Unfortunately or fortunately, SNMA split from NMA, so we are no longer, we're always together, but we are right, exactly, always, but we are not really linked. So tell me a little bit more about how that is, whether pros, cons, and how things run in your organization.
Yeah, definitely. So for LMSA, it's actually interesting that our faculty and physician branch is actually newer than LMSA itself and is a branch off of LMSA. Wow. So we call them FPAC, or Faculty Physician Advisory Committee. And that is led by our executive director, who's Dr. Sanchez. And essentially, Dr. Sanchez and I work together to plan and make sure anything that we do comes together and we are a part of each other's events. And so, for example, our conference is coming up, and the first 2 to 3 days is actually much more focused on faculty development. while the last 2 to 3 days is much more focused on pre-medical and medical student development. And so part of that is kind of encouraging our faculty and physicians that will be there for the first few days to stay and help with the last few days as speakers, as workshop leaders, or even just to join in for mentoring and mingling and getting to know everyone. So I appreciate that because I guess they're newer and it was a branch off of the medical student portion. It is very much a partnership right now, and we really work together. I join the meetings with the faculty and physician, and I have an equal voice with them, which is amazing as a student because there's often this huge hierarchy and differential, and anything that a medical student says is often not taken very seriously. But whenever I have joined a meeting or we talk about anything really, I can see the interest in their faces as they listen to whatever I might be contributing at the time, whether it's as we prepare a letter talking to the AAMC, or we're working on a new workshop, or recruiting more schools to join our national center. They take the student ideas very seriously and really want to work to make it a partnership, which I really appreciate. And it kind of goes to one of the questions I was asked of how faculty and physicians can really help us as medical students grow in our leadership positions or as medical students. And it's really that partnership, because as busy as you might be as physicians and faculty, you might remember medical students are too. And if anything, we're generally a lot more scared to reach out than the other way around. And we love it when faculty reach out straight to us to ask, how can I help? These are my skills. Can I help put on a workshop? Like anything like that is always openly received, honestly. And I think it makes it so much easier to break down that hierarchy that has been developed over hundreds of years. And so that is sort of why like LMSA and the FPAC are a little bit different than the way like AMWA was set up, or even SNMA and NMA.
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing. You have your own mentors, right? You have mentors in just for clinical experience, but also mentors in just helping organizational development and structure. And so I think that's a big benefit, as much as, it's kind of, catch-22. Is it being apart or being together? I think, obviously we see a lot of benefits to both. Donna, I wonder if you might want to talk a little bit about how student organizations play a role in addressing major issues in healthcare, in social justice, and racism. We see how impactful students were in the COVID-19 pandemic, right? In their schools and in hospitals. We see how important student and just like younger-led movements during the social reckoning after George Floyd's murder was important for our society. And how do you see organizations such as your own helping to lead in these areas?
Thank you, Dr. V. That's a great question. And I can definitely speak to APAMSA's experience. However, I've worked with, almost all these orgs that's represented across here. So you're absolutely right. This COVID past 2 years has been treacherous, I guess is like the best word I can come up with. Miserable, treacherous. I think everyone can kind of commiserate. I did not memorize these numbers. I'm reading them out loud. So Stop AAPI Hate has had 10,370 hate incidents reported to their website. And I'm very, very sure that is underreported. 1 in 5 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have experienced a hate crime incident this year. These numbers are staggering. Like you mentioned before, with the George Floyd social justice movement, all of us were very devastated about, all these conditions that came together, social economics, social injustice, and just the health field, being overwhelmed by COVID kind of blew up in our faces, essentially. We reached out and worked with SNMA, LMSA. All of us here have, our equivalent of advocacy vice presidents and directors, reaching out and making these joint statements and standing together in solidarity. So I am very grateful for everyone here who has empowered each other and uplifted each other during these times. I think I would have to size down to 3 most important things when we're considering a role for the national student organizations. Number 1 is education. We all put on a lot of education events, but probably recently it's been more of advocacy events. For example, at our national conference, we had a before and after Atlanta discussion. As you all probably remember, last year there was a tragic shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, which prompted us to have a national town hall and to have some healing circles for our members. The second thing is outreach. Hard to do it virtually, but we had to do it anyways. We had to flip the script and be creative in a way that students can engage with themselves on an individual level, on a local level, regional, and national. And so I'm on social media, which I should not be, but on social media looking at all these amazing things that people are doing. Medical students going to marches, medical students doing health policy, going out to the community and supporting them, and leadership, as we are here right now. And the last thing I want to really emphasize is accountability. One of the proudest things that I was very proud of that we did last year was that we made a medical education med ed petition and sent it out to really big organizations such as AMA, AAMC, and a lot of big parent organizations like that. And we basically have asked and requests, and I'm sure all the other orgs here can speak to that as well, is that it's hard for students to affect those changes if we don't have the support behind us. And all the onus shouldn't fall on the students anyway, right? And I know that faculty and staff maybe sometimes have their hands tied with admin, and there's all these different politics in the mix. However, the minimal that I think rests for accountability is to be able to publicly acknowledge and denounce acts of anti-Asian violence, acts of anti-Black violence, Hispanic, Latino violence, everybody, right? Like just being able to see and hear your marginalized and minority students and support them in a way to publicly do it. And then also recognize that medical students are at risk, right? We're at risk every day. Some of our members have actually gotten attacked in New York City, like beaten outside of an ER. And so having the appropriate accommodations for these students for their protection is very important as well. So accountability, I would say that's my ranking order. It's the hardest to do. However, I don't think anyone here is going to give up. So hopefully we'll see some good changes coming out of this year.
Yeah, excellent points. Did anyone else want to add something to that question or answer? I know it was so thorough, so good. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit in talking about, I think, one of the toughest things that just women in general have to deal with on the wards, and just individuals of color. I mean, there's a lot of intersectionality on this panel. So just in dealing with it in general, I'm going to just read like a little sentence because I think it's so, well, you'll understand why I chose this. We teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. We say to girls, you can have ambition, but not too much. You should aim to be successful, but not too successful. Otherwise, you will threaten the man. Right? So I think that by a Nigerian writer is, to me, very appropriate for this panel today. I think we all know that medicine is male-dominated. It's a patriarchy and a hierarchy. And so just wondering, women face gendered stereotypes, sexual stereotypes, microaggressions. We know that harassment in academic medicine is double that of other STEM fields, right? There was that National Academy sort of paper that came out, I think it was 2018, that said that. And so in thinking about all of that, whoever feels comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable, but just wondering, is this anything that you've experienced on the wards, you've experienced in your just classroom dealings, in your small groups, how you approached it, and any tips that you would give, people that are listening to us right now, because I think it's such an important, this unfortunately is everywhere. It's, no one's gonna be immune to it. Some may face more than others, but definitely something I think for this panel that we should address for those that are listening.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that quote. Because, I mean, at the beginning of this panel, you listened to no fewer than, I think, 4 of us say, well, I never thought I would be here. And I think that's the result, that idea of it not even occurring to somebody that, like, maybe someday I'll run for the president of this organization I've been a part of. I think that is the result of teaching girls and women to be small. So I think certainly those attitudes can be really pervasive.
And you make a great point about that. That isn't even something that I considered, was the fact that, if that was the reasoning as to why we saw that as such a goal that was so far outside of our personal thoughts of achievement. I know personally I've had experiences more so on the wards and in classrooms where there was, clear biases, where you have patients that see both you and your male counterpart both in short white coats, but they assume that one is the medical student and the other is a nurse somehow. Or even so, more recently, I walked in with an attending, and the attending clearly introduced myself as, she's a medical student. She's graduating this year. She's going to do your exam. And at the end of the exam, as I'm walking out, they're like, oh, well, great, good luck with nursing school. And he goes, that was, for him, that was his first time actually ever seeing it. He had only heard about it from his own coworkers. And, it was a shock for him, but that was an everyday experience for me. I brushed it off. And the reason why I brushed it off wasn't because I didn't care or I didn't feel like I deserved that respect, because definitely I do. But I also realized that the amount of time that I spend dwelling on that can diminish my own my own self-esteem in myself. For me, and I'm sure with other women leaders, minority leaders, imposter syndrome is a real thing. Especially because, for me, I didn't really get to see a lot of other low-income students who are in medical school. Medical school is not something that low-income people go into. And it's not because they aren't intelligent and they don't possess the skills. It's because they can't afford it. And so, you always feel like you don't have that community of people, and that you feel like you don't deserve to be there, and you have to remind yourself all the time. So when I have those experiences that happen, unfortunately, I don't know if it's the healthiest way of dealing with it, but I kind of use that water off a duck's back analogy, and that, that's the case now. They don't believe it. But, when I have the longer white coat, I'm sure I'll still have the same situation, because I've seen that happen then. Yeah. But you just have to perform, do what you're supposed to do as a physician. You will slowly change those minds, and you'll slowly change that mindset. At the opening, Dr. Villanueva mentioned that about 50% of medical student population are women. So that mindset is 100% changing. In going into leadership, on our board of directors, the majority of our board of directors are women. So, it goes to show that the traditional thought of what a doctor is, who a leader is, who a physician leader is is drastically changing in our current landscape. And so I just keep looking forward to what that change will be a decade from now. And I'm hopeful for what that change will look like for, other women and girls who are looking into coming into these roles in the future.
Yeah, you guys already are that culture shift. Just this panel tonight. Yes, that's right, Donna. That is right. You are already that culture shift, because look at who are the leaders of these organizations. So it's already happening. It is already happening. And you guys have the power to make the difference in what medicine will look like in the future. And you have to make that change for us. You have to. Anybody else? Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I actually feel pretty lucky that I have been surrounded by women my whole life up until medical school, who told me I could be successful in whatever I wanted to do. So I'm really grateful for all of those people. But I would say really it wasn't until medical school where I was told like repeatedly to sit down, like that I wasn't equal to my peers, especially in my capabilities and my voice. So I think, unfortunately, I've become more of like a quiet and observant person than I have ever been in my life prior to medical school, which has been interesting. And then I think like there's the additional piece of now being in a new position as a medical student on the wards, having to like directly advocate for other people in the moment. In my case, most of the time it's been for Black patients, particularly for like receiving pain medicine, and for Black patients, like with non-Black clinicians. And the biggest issue is that you kind of have to weigh, like, I want to do the best for the patient, but also like my grade and my career are on the line, which is an interesting position to be in. I don't know that there's other situations that are similar to that. But I think that could be really a challenging place to be.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think from like a leadership perspective, and from coming at it from like the intersectional identities that I have, which are like Black, gay, female, I've been told countless of times throughout my life, and particularly in medical school by people at all levels, that like, you're intimidating, you're so aggressive, like your language and your emails is like too straightforward, like, take a step back, calm down, you're angry, you're so mad, everything makes you angry, you can't just be, all these words that you hear all the time, as women, as leaders, as like a Black woman. I'm constantly being told to tone it down, and I when I hear that, I tone it up. So I just, I think that if you in leadership positions, you're going to face those kind of comments, and you're going to be told those things, and it's all because of what we've been talking about in terms of like the patriarchy and what people's ideas of how women are supposed to act, and all of the problematic things and ways that people try to like govern like Black women and gay people and all of these things. And I think it's really challenging to be in such a hierarchical field as academic medicine and still feel comfortable speaking up for things that need to change. And also it's really taxing from a minority standpoint, right? Like minority tax is very real. And so I don't say this to task everybody who identifies with a minority identity to go out and like, tell your faculty at your school to do better. But if you have the energy, if you have the capacity, if you have the support, then I think that there's a lot of weight and power in using your voice and words to speak up, because that's how change, even if it's really small, that's how change is made at the institutional, local, and national levels. And so, from advocating for a patient's name to be corrected in their chart because they're being dead named for years, to emailing the school to update like gender neutral language on their website, like these small changes and small emails make a big difference in people's lives. And you might be labeled as the person who's always mad, but at the same time, like, I know what I'm doing is making a difference for people, for the students and my peers and my patients. And so it's challenging to kind of push against that, but it's also worth it. Again, going back to my why and like we've been talking about all along, just kind of setting the field and the groundwork for the people coming up behind us and the patients that we plan to serve.
You will forever have that label. I still get that label. I told you guys the other day, I'm 5 feet tall and I've been told I'm intimidating and I need to smile more. And, you know, I'm not, you know, yeah. So that's always going to happen. And you just have to know that that's their issue and you're doing exactly what you're doing. You're doing the best for your patients and for your community. And that's most important. Okay, we're kind of rounding out. I don't know if anybody else wanted to comment on that. I wanted to get to 2 of the questions in the chat, if that's okay, unless someone had like a burning comment. Karina?
I was just gonna say, it's always really, really nice and it feels so good when you prove them wrong. Because my whole trajectory at this point, there's always been someone that tells me, are you sure that's what you want to do? Maybe you should think of something else. Even just thinking about times in class as a high schooler where they're like, oh, you're applying for college, are you sure? Maybe you should just start with community college. Mm-hmm. And then making it to college, basically getting a full scholarship and feeling that much better because I'm like, not only did I get to where you said I couldn't, I'm getting paid to go to school, which is amazing. And while there, someone was like, are you sure you want to do the MD PhD? That's really hard. It's like almost impossible to get in. And then that same person wrote me one of the strongest letters of recommendation when I applied to MD PhD programs. And here I am finally finishing my MD PhD program. I'm already one kind of doctor. I'm about to be a second type of doctor.
That's right.
And in so many ways, I feel like I love it. I love it so much that I've made it this far. It hurts sometimes when people that are supposed to support you say those words, but at the end, I feel like they also add some extra fuel to the fire and make me go a little bit harder and a little bit stronger because I know I can, and I need to make sure I don't doubt myself.
That's right. Don't ever doubt yourself, and find that person that's going to support you in school. Maybe that's someone in your field. Maybe that's someone that looks like you. It may not be. For me, it was an anesthesiologist that I did my senior research thesis with, who came to my installation as president of NMA. She told me I was going to be Surgeon General in medical school, but that didn't work out. But president of NMA is not bad either. But just find
you can still be Surgeon General, like
maybe not. But just find people that have your back and support you. I think that's you just need those people to be able to be a support, and also if there's a difficult situation that you encounter in the wards or in classroom, that advocate that can help you sort of navigate that situation. You really should never try to navigate those situations alone, but really try to find if there's like an omnibuds person. That's not the right word. I forgot, but you know what I meant. What I mean. Or someone, someone at your school, student affairs, whoever you feel comfortable with, but helping to navigate those really tough situations. So as a question in the chat about every member having value, what is the biggest challenge you've had being national leaders, and how your physician leadership can assist you in your transition from student to physician, or how you can envision? Because no one's transitioned there yet. So how you can envision. It will. I'll tell you, yes, it does. Spoiler alert, it's going to help you. But anybody want to answer that one?
I can start. My biggest challenge that I've had from being a national leader is trying to basically speak on behalf or do what I can on behalf of all of our members. And that is because everyone has their own needs. not only does everyone have their own needs, but there's so much to be done, especially I know when it comes to focusing on, minority, underrepresented minority and African-American students, both pre-med and medical students trying to become physicians. There's so much to be done, and you want to achieve it all. And it's kind of impossible when you're doing it as a medical student trying to make your way through at your own time, and you only have a 1 year length of time for your seating in your position. And I think that that's the biggest challenge for me, not to mention the fact that I am a huge empath. I read into what other people need, and I'm so sympathetic for whatever their needs are. And I'm always trying to figure out, well, how can we also do this? How can we make a scholarship for this particular case? How can we find the money for this? Or how can we create this program for that? And literally, I had a meeting last week and everyone looked at me like, Chantal, you're doing too much. And I'm like, I'm just trying to do as much as I can. And I think for me, that's the biggest challenge that I have from being a national leader, because the reason why we came into this is we had a passion for the mission and for the students and for our members. And you want to be able to act on their behalf when you finally are in that position, but then you find out there are limitations to what you can do. So I'm still working my way through that, obviously, because that just happened last week. But yeah, and I will defer the second part to that question to, one of my other panelists.
I think Lauren wanted to say something. Yeah,
I can jump in. I kind of talked about the challenges earlier, but I will say like the biggest thing that physician kind of mentors or colleagues can do is like listen when we speak, because when we say something, like we're saying it to be heard. So you can listen.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I actually add one more thing?
Of course. This is your panel. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The other challenging thing, and I'm seeing this develop more this year than I have in the past, is getting tangible support from our institutions. And I think that we saw a glimpse of what tangible support would be, especially right after the George Floyd murder and the social demonstrations that occurred the summer of 2020, which was so necessary. And at that time, there was so much kind of hope that, much of that support would still be there because of all of the words of solidarity and those things. But then we see what I've been seeing now is a lack of support when it comes to students wanting to go to, let's say, conferences, because that's at the forefront of my mind. Supporting students who want to go to conferences, supporting students who want to execute, who are trying to do research, supporting students who may decide that their research project in particular is more public health focused or focused on social determinants rather than the medical side. And we know from research that all of those things are so important to the outcomes of health in medicine, but it seems that there's not always that support that is needed when students are asking for it. And so I think that I feel that that's challenging. I'd love to hear more from, the other leaders on this call, if you've noticed this particular shift, or if this has not been a shift, if it's always been that way. Have you noticed that was a challenge for you as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. I know we're short on time, but yeah, I think when I first entered medical school, I came in like very heavy with I'm doing qualitative research because I trained in this at my public health program, and I do LGBT med ed and LGBT health and LGBT everything, and it's all qualitative. And my school is very traditionally, it has been very like biomedicine, basic science, you're going to sit at a bench and pipette, and this is what you're going to do. And I was like, absolutely not. To the point where like all the research courses that we took first year that were mandated were very much like very basic science focused in terms of like how they were training people to approach research. And luckily I'd already had the qualitative training to know how to go off and do my own project. But I approached the research leaders and I was like, listen, like people are interested in this very important subject of social medicine. And luckily I know how to do it already, but like there are students here who need that training. And they were receptive and have since kind of shifted it. But I agree with you completely that that is something that institutions need to be more supportive of and open up more opportunities for students to do that important work and research.
Yeah, and I think you guys need to hold your institutions accountable, right? That's their right. It's your education, and you dictate what's important. Not everyone is going to be at the bench, and that's important. We know that we need all different types of research, and diversity in research is what makes what medicine needs to improve health equity, right? And reduce those disparities that we know exist. It's because we don't really care about marginalized populations and the research that goes along with their care. Okay, so we are at a little over time. We apologize. I think we could kind of chat for a very, very long time with this group, and maybe we're gonna have to do a part 2. I think we might have to do like a part 2 for like Women's History Month. I'm just putting it out there. But I'd like to, just for everyone to just maybe just give a final thought or comment or however you want to close out tonight's panel. There was one other question that asked about that thought everyone else got paid. No, only Hannah with a big smile on her face. Hannah gets paid. All the other people are not paid. So Hannah's the happy one. Maybe Hannah can go first.
Yeah, because I'm not in school, so I have no access to loan funds. That's why I'm paid. Yeah, so final thoughts for this. I think AMSA is primarily an advocacy organization, and that advocacy is pointed in a lot of different directions. But if I could leave you with one thought, it's really don't lose your fire and your drive to make things better. Because that is, medical school has a way of grinding that out of people, but we need more of it. We need so much more of it to change this system for the better.
Don't lose your fire and your drive. Don't ever lose it. It's not just medical school, it's medicine in general. Can do that very easily to you. So very, very, very important point. Anybody who wants to go next?
I can go next. And I guess going with that, I think it's very classic in Spanish, si se puede, because no matter what, you work hard at it. If it's something you really want and you have that fire in the drive, you can definitely do it. And just in case you need extra help, ponte las pilas, because that's what my parents told me. Put your batteries on, as in get kicking, like that Energizer bunny, because sometimes that's what you need.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Who's next?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, which is that like along this journey, especially if you're pre-med or just starting out and as a first year, a lot of people are going to say like, you can't do that. Your GPA is not good enough. Your step score is not good enough. Like your research isn't good enough to go for that competitive field. But if like you work hard at it, if you know that it's something that you need and want to do with your life, then you can find champions for you to help you be that leader and hold down that role while doing research, while juggling all the other hats that you juggle. I think it's really important to have strong support from mentors to peers. And that's like, you have to lean on people throughout this. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way early on in this. But yeah, ask for help when you need it and people will support you.
I like things in 3, so I will round off my takeaway thoughts with a list of 3. So first of all, there's no right answer to really anything. You will find yourself doubting yourself and your decisions over and over again. And to Chantal's point earlier, imposter syndrome is real and it's a lifetime struggle. The second is to stand in solidarity with each other and empower each other. I feel like sometimes we have this scarcity mindset when really we can have an abundance mindset of helping uplift each other. And last, take care of yourself. I know easier said than done, but you're going to live with yourself for the rest of your life. So every decision you make, every thought that you think, it affects you in the long run, cumulatively. Thanks.
So I wanted to just leave you all with my own story, one of many examples of this story, which is me walking into a room to see a patient with our team. And this was an ultrasound rotation, so they had me do her ultrasound for a suspected a threatened abortion or miscarriage, which is what we call that. And it was a Black woman. She was younger, looked a bit scared. I went in with the team. The entire team was white, with the exception of myself, with one other woman who was on the team. And went ahead and did the scan. And as we were walking out of the room, she grabbed my hand and said, "I'm just so happy that you're one of the people who's seeing me today. It's just, I was scared, but I'm happy that you're one of the people who's seeing me." And like I said, this is one of many examples of patients who, when you walk in the room, they will be thrilled that you are their medical student or their physician. And it's for those patients that, even despite all of the challenges that we may have on the ward or the challenges that we may have in the classroom or in the boardroom or whatever that is, it's those patients that we continue to do it for. So, continue to do the work and to change the landscape for your future patients and for their health, and to just decrease these disparities that are out there, because they need you and they want you.
And I'll just end with just that, looking at this panel, like, and the work that we're all doing collectively, I'm feeling pretty hopeful for the future of medicine. I'm really honored and excited and glad that everyone agreed to do this panel when I reached out, and super grateful that Dr. V agreed to moderate. We're so lucky to have you here moderating this panel for us. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm just going to say, you all are just so amazing. I think, I had a super long day in the office today and kind of running here, and I was a little tired, and you all just gave me just so much inspiration and hope, and reminded me of why I became president of SNMA when I was in medical school. Thank you so much for your leadership and your dedication and your sacrifice, because you all sacrifice so much to be the leaders that you are. And then finally, someone wrote it in the chat. Oh, I wanted to give her credit for it. Oh, Linda Hughes McDuffie wrote, "You're walking in your purpose." And, although most of you think that you kind of maybe fell into these roles, you did not. You were divinely ordained to be in the role that you are in. And I am I'm so excited to see what you will do as physician leaders, because you will continue to be physician leaders. I just am so excited to work with you as colleagues in all the spaces that we connect and in spaces that we don't. And I know I speak for everyone. I hope you can see the chat later. Everyone said just such amazing things about you, all true, but just we're so grateful for your time and your expertise in being leaders, and your motivation to people to continue or to even become leaders when they thought they couldn't be. So thank you so, so very much. I know I speak for everyone to say that, in saying that. Happy President's Day to all the presidents. And hopefully we can do this again sometime, because I think this was amazing. Round of applause.